name is Gary Pond, and I lead the global authentication business at Colorcon. And for those that aren't familiar with Colorcon, Colorcon is the world leader in providing film coatings to the pharmaceutical industry. So the first question is, why is traceability beyond the package important? And the primary driver is that pharmaceutical companies are accountable for ensuring that their medicines are safe when it goes to the patient. And the COVID-19 pandemic has led to a dramatic increase in the number of online pharmacies and the supply of counterfeit drugs. And in fact, the World Health Organization recently identified the issue of counterfeit drugs as one of the most urgent health challenges for the next decade. And why is that? It's simple. I mean, consumers are starting to buy more of their medicines online. In the developed countries, it's estimated about 25% of all consumers have purchased a medicine online. The World Health Organization reports in their analysis that greater than 50% of all drugs that are purchased online from online pharmacies are suspected counterfeit. And there's a number of different reports that certainly show that whenever any patient does an online medicine search, 100% of the time they're going to get links that go to illegal pharmacies. You know, in addition, the counterfeit meds have a significant cost to the pharmaceutical industry. The estimates are around $200 billion globally this past year. But more importantly, it damages the company reputation and the brand integrity. And certainly most importantly, we've heard a lot about patient safety and focus on the patient. It's estimated by Interpol that about 1 million patients die each year because of counterfeit medications. The second issue that's most concerning is that the incident of counterfeiting, diversion, and theft is just continuing to grow. When you look at the numbers between 2015 and 2019, it's grown over 70%. And this is in the Pharmaceutical Security Institute data. So it's the major pharmaceutical companies around the world. And more importantly, it's at an all-time high. And you know, there's a lot of questions on why, and it's pretty simple. The pharma counterfeiting is a low risk, high reward activity, especially when you compare it to other global criminal activity. The prescription drug business represents one of the largest revenue opportunities for counterfeiters, and it has some of the lower penalties in some of the major countries around the world. In addition, there's a lot of new technology that's available, and these criminals are becoming extremely sophisticated in their use of printers and tablet presses. And then lastly, you know, it's leveraging the expansion and the use of the internet and the online channels. It's estimated that there's over 600 illegal pharmacies coming on board each month, and that is just continuing to grow as well. You know, if we take a look at the online activity surrounding the pandemic for COVID-19, I think this provides a really good example of the speed with which counterfeiters can act. This graphic on the left, you can see the red and the blue lines. They represent how many websites were being registered each day in the first quarter of 2020. And the way they identified these is if they had COVID or coronavirus, you know, in the website name. The blue line, when they did the further investigation, shows those that are considered legitimate online outlets for products to support COVID-19. And this wasn't just all medications. It could have been masks and different things to support the needs at the time. But the red line is for websites that are likely to be scams. And if you take a look at the volume relative to the legitimate sites, as well as how quickly they got up and running way before the legitimate sites, this shows you how quickly the criminals are taking advantage of opportunities in the marketplace. In addition, when you take a look at the corona vaccine, it was identified 8 months before the vaccine was available that it was being sold through social media and online channels, obviously a counterfeit product. Unfortunately, this past April, the Pfizer vaccine was identified in Mexico as having some counterfeit product available, as well as some fake doses of a COVID-19 drug, Remdesivir, for sale on the internet and in a private hospital within Mexico. So this is impacting all the countries around the world, as well certainly as Mexico. In fact, Mexico is in the top 10 of countries that have illegal medication markets. And you can see certainly the major players, China, Russia, and the US and India, but Brazil and Mexico are significant markets for illegal medications. And in fact, the Mexican Association of Pharmaceutical Research Institute or Industries estimating that over half of the medications sold in Mexico are either stolen, expired, or falsified. So the challenges we're seeing around the world are also being seen locally in the Mexican market. In response to this increased criminal activity and the resulting patient deaths, some countries such as the US and the EU have passed what they're calling serialization legislation to try to protect the supply chain. And basically serialization is where each unique package is provided a unique identifier that can be traced through the country's supply chain. Currently, there are over 15 other countries in the process of developing serialization guidelines. Countries such as Brazil, China, and Russia are in the process. But what's happening is each country is really developing different requirements. So it's a very country by country process. It's my understanding that Mexico, via the Federal Commission for the Protection Against Health Risk, is in the process of evaluating serialization as well. At this point, those countries that have implemented serialization are not seeing a significant impact in the reduction of counterfeit meds. But it does appear to provide benefit in the tracking and tracing of product through legitimate supply chain when there's a quality issue or a question about a batch of a product. But importantly, it's not having a significant impact on counterfeit products. And the question is why? Why isn't serialization reducing the criminal activity? And one significant reason is that it's focused on the secondary package. It's rarely on the primary package, and it's never on tablets or capsules of the product itself. So if the product gets separated from its secondary package, due to the fact that it's repackaged, it's not possible to determine its provenance. So it's really impossible to track or trace a product through the supply chain or determine if the product is real or fake if it's separated. Another challenge is with the help of the printer technology, the criminals are serializing barcodes or actually copying the serialized barcodes. They're also demonstrating that they can copy more sophisticated techniques like holograms and the foil seals. So there's a lot of fake product being put out in the market in authentic packaging. And there's a recent example in the US where Gilead's HIV medications were counterfeited. And what was unusual here is that their two HIV products are specialty products, so they're only available through 16 distributors in the US. But the counterfeiters were able to get their hands on original bottles, some original labels, but also some counterfeit labels. They used counterfeit foil seals on the packaging, and all of the packages contain fake tablets. So that's just an example of how sophisticated the criminals are getting. I mean, the bottom line is that serialization is providing valuable information, but it's only one piece of a multi-layered product strategy. The on-dose or on-product authentication technologies I'm going to talk about shortly are a new and innovative security feature that can help protect products, companies, and their patients above and beyond what we're seeing currently with serialization. And it's, these expected challenges with serialization, that the FDA is one of the only regulatory bodies that has come out with guidance around other methods. And the FDA published guidance, it's a long title called Guidance for the Industry Incorporation of Physical Chemical Identifiers into Solid Oral Dosage Form Drug Products for Anti-Counterfeiting, or we just call it the PCID guidelines. And in their guidance, they recommended a combination of the serialization components of track and trace with the on-dose product authentication technologies to provide a greater level of security for drug products. They certainly recognized that there was, quote, no single magic bullet. And they're recommending that the PCIDs, or these physical chemical identifiers, in our case, we'll talk about micro taggants that are added to the film coating, be pharmacologically inactive so that they can be treated as excipients when they're added to a new or existing medicine. And this then would allow the products to come on the market without need for additional clinical trials. In fact, in the US, they've been very clear that an approved product would only need to file a level 1 post-approval change in the annual report, or if it's a new product, include it in the standard submission process. As a result of the FDA guidance, our pharma customer feedback has really drove us to take a look at things we can do within our film coatings to help them address this issue of fake product. We've been working on developing a safe and secure, what we call on-dose product, or micro taggant and molecular taggant, that can be added to our existing film coatings to, in essence, make the tablet itself a barcode. And it's this barcode that can be authenticated to determine whether the tablet is real or fake. And we do believe this level of authentication at the individual dosage unit, combined with serialization, will provide a much greater verification and security to the supply chain and ultimately to the patient. This really provides a new feature that can be considered by companies when develop their product layering strategy. And as companies that we're working with, I thought I'd just lay out, some of the thought process of how they think about some of these security features. So one of the first places many companies start is considering the stakeholders. Is this a security feature that you only want available to your product security team and need to know folks within manufacturing? Or is it, on the other end of the spectrum, something you want to communicate more broadly where patients can actually authenticate products? And then you have those in between. If you're looking at serialization, you're communicating those concepts very openly and they're on the package for everyone to see within the supply chain. And there may be other efforts that are more covert that you keep within the company, but you bring it down to the local country or local region. The other thing to consider is, where do you want those features to appear? As I mentioned, for serialization, it's primarily on the secondary package. And if that product gets separated from the package, then you lose all ability to identify the provenance of that product. There are a few solutions that are becoming available on the primary package, and that would be, for example, on a unit dose package, the foil backing, things that could be uniquely applied there. And lastly, on the actual product itself, or we call it on dose. What we'll talk about here shortly is the only on dose product that's currently available in the marketplace. So certainly, as you consider your stakeholders and where in the packaging, the big decision about how covert you want those features to be. And there's a number of different things companies are using, certainly from simple graphic features that may not be noticeable to most people, except those that are aware how it's printed. Physical features, such as the arc of a specific cut on a box, it might be very unique. There's certainly some specialty inks that are available, and then the taggants that I'm going to talk about on dose. It can be in the film coating or actually on the logo itself. And then lastly, you can go to the other end of the spectrum and be more overt, and these are things that are very obvious: holograms, QR codes, tamper-evident labels. And once again, taggants on tablet in the film coating could be at this end of the spectrum as well, if you want your patients to authenticate using a smartphone application. And we'll talk about that as well. The focus for Colorcon has really been on the on-dose and the primary packaging area. So, Colorcon, we branded our on-dose authentication offering as SoteriaRx. And SoteriaRx is not just one offering, but it's a number of solutions to meet the different needs of our pharmaceutical and nutraceutical customers. Our approach to on-dose authentication leverages the best technologies available today, but we are continuing to evaluate anything new that comes on the market that could be used for on-dose technologies. We want to ensure that within SoteriaRx, we're bringing the most innovative products to market. When we identify these products, we sign exclusive agreements globally with our partners, and then we do a significant amount of development before we even make them known to our customers. So the products and solutions I'll be talking about today, we've been working on for the past 2 or 3 years. So one way to think about our solution is to use an analogy of a lock and a key. The SoteriaRx micro taggants themselves, in essence, become the lock. Each micro taggant contains specific information about the product, which is unique to that product. So it's like a fingerprint, a specific fingerprint that goes on the product in the film coating or on the logo. To detect that taggant and identify that fingerprint, there's a sophisticated detection methodology that needs to open or unlock that micro taggant to identify the product. And it's important that that lock and key are a one-to-one correlation. So only Colorcon maintains the key or the detection method, which maintains the security. The technology is nearly impossible to replicate or reverse engineer. And the detection method is really unique for each product. So it is extremely secure. The different taggant solutions that we have available today, one is a molecular taggant, and the second is based on silicon dioxide. The molecular taggants are made from DNA, and it's important to note that this DNA is fully synthetic and it's non-biological. It consists of short base pairs, actually less than 200 base pairs of DNA molecules, and once again, it's synthesized biochemically. And one of the advantages is that they are extremely small and therefore are contained in our film coating products at parts per billion. So it's very difficult to detect. And importantly, it won't interfere with any standard analytical testing. It's also important that these sequences contain no gene function. They simply serve as a DNA-based barcode where we can authenticate information such as a company, a product, and even a manufacturing site. Now, the silica-based tags are different. They're made from the common excipient silica dioxide that's used in many pharmaceutical formulations. And this taggant is chemically inert. It's extremely resilient. In the US and in many countries in Europe, it's considered GRAS or generally accepted as safe. And these are small as well. They're microscopic particles that are virtually invisible to the naked eye, but they have an engineered pore structure that's etched into each one of them. And it's this pore structure which is customized to reflect a unique spectral index, which represents a specific signature that's unique to each tag and can be decoded by a proprietary reader. As we developed our solution, one of our goals was to minimize the impact on the film coating process. And so the product that we provide to our customers is open dry powder, which has the SoteriaRx taggant already mixed in with it. And so the process of film coating doesn't change at all, with a few small exceptions. On the QA side, when the material comes into the manufacturing site, the QA process, you want to authenticate that the proper tag is in the product. And then as you're film coating the tablets, there'll be some random tablet sampling to ensure that it's being coated properly. But other than that, there's no additional major equipment or capital investment required. So the manufacturing process does not change. I mentioned that the molecular and silica taggants are locked with a unique code. And each lock needs a unique key, in essence, to recognize or open the lock to identify the product. And the DNA taggants are detected in the same way that forensic scientists can detect and amplify DNA through a PCR machine or a polymerase chain reaction process. And for each taggant, there's a corresponding reagent that is used for detection. that uses this PCR process, and that reagent is actually part of the key. And without the reagent, you cannot detect the DNA and decode it. We call this a desktop PCR machine that's available, but we also have a portable PCR machine that if companies wanted to go down to a more local level, it can be battery powered. It leverages a mobile phone to connect to the internet. For our silica-based products, there's two detection options that are available. And one is what we call our desktop reader, and it uses a much broader spectral image, so we're able to do many more types of tags with this to identify, for example, a manufacturing site as well as the product and the manufacturer. And we're also in development of a smartphone app, and it's the smartphone app, and it's a different silicon-based taggant that will allow us to put it onto a product to determine whether that tablet is real or fake. And let me give you an example of how that works. So in this case, we have a coded tablet that has taggants, and the patient or the manufacturer just needs to take a picture of the tablet. And within seconds, it determines whether it's real or not. And this message can be customized based on the needs of the pharmaceutical customer. It's important to understand that all our offerings are supported by a secure cloud database. So the smartphone app that you just saw and its back-end database supports the ability to collect data in real time, such as what product was authenticated, where was it authenticated, and any other approved metadata that companies would like to capture. And this allows companies to be able to look at a dashboard to identify if there are issues in certain areas of the country where they're seeing counterfeit product being detected. We have also several customers that are interested in using the smartphone technology to directly engage with patients, which would enable them to authenticate their medication. And for many patients, if they purchase it online, they want to ensure they have the right medication, especially with all of the counterfeit that is being identified in the online marketplace. The smartphone will also include patient support features that will add value to improve patient adherence, things such as the ability to put reminders on the phone of when to take the medication, and then track that they scan the pill, and then they could communicate that to a caregiver to ensure that they stay adherent. It can provide patient engagement materials, so product and disease information can be delivered at the right time, right when a patient is scanning their medicine or thinking about their therapy. And we can also introduce behavioral-based programs, all with the goal of improving outcomes and building patient loyalty. We're also finding companies are interested in this technology to support some new virtual clinical trial work that they're doing now, that they're starting to move some of the clinical trial experience outside of the actual clinic itself. So, we really look at this as a smart medicine platform where we're digitizing the standard tablet and making that tablet a barcode, either through the film coding or through taggants in the logo ink. And we can also apply our coding on labels. We can apply it to vial caps to be able to authenticate parenteral products as well. And you combine that with the detection method, whether it's a smartphone, a mobile, or a desktop reader, and a back-end reporting infrastructure. And what we're attempting to do is to, in essence, digitize traditional medicines to make it smarter, with the ultimate goal of improving health outcomes and patient safety. That same lock and key analogy and authentication solutions can be applied in our inks as well. Colorcon offers two different types of ink. One is an OPA code product that goes right on tablet and is in essence an edible ink. And we're working on including our Taggants in those ink products, as well as our no-tox inks, which can go on the primary and secondary pharmaceutical packaging if needed. And a good example of how this would work differently than existing products today would be, in this case, we take a parenteral product in a vial, and we can either put a clear varnish overprint on the label, or we could apply it underneath a QR code. And whether it's a clinical trial patient or a patient or a manufacturer, they can use the cell phone and they can take a picture of the label or the QR code. And what happens is it authenticates that the product is real, while at the same time uses the coding or its program to take the patient to an online either website or online experience that's built by the company. So it's using both this spectral image, in this case, unique fingerprint to authenticate, and it's using the optical recognition capabilities of the smartphone to be able to direct the patient or user, to a specific website. So just taking a look at the use cases and where there's value. And we talked a little bit about the challenges with counterfeit. Having a product like this on a tablet would allow companies to very quickly assess whether the product is real or fake. And it can be done at the company level, or it can be done even at the patient level if they chose to do that. What we're finding is there's a lot of interest in speeding up the quality assurance process. So complaints coming in from customers, patients, pharmacies to pharmaceutical companies about a product where the color doesn't seem to be right, or it seems to be peeling or flaking. They can very quickly assess whether that product is real or fake, either internally using a desktop system if the product is sent internally, or they could use a smartphone app and have a pharmacist or a patient download it and scan the product. And this really allows companies to triage the management of issues with poor quality products and determine whether truly it's an issue of whether the product is fake and counterfeit, or whether there was possibly a quality issue during the manufacturing process. And lastly, just securing the clinical supplies to be able to ensure patients, when they scan the pill, when they get it and take it, that they're taking the appropriate product, whether it's placebo or the real product, and then also document when it was taken. On the commercial side, there's a lot of interest on the commercial teams within pharmaceutical companies about interacting and better engaging patients through patient support, with the goal to improve outcomes and ultimately to improve brand loyalty. So just to sum it up, what we've tried to do with our SoteriaRx solution is to create a solution that's simple to adopt. It comes within our film coatings or our inks and follows the normal manufacturing process. It's easy to authenticate using the desktop or the smartphone reader. It's tied to a invisible barcode that's integrated into a secure website. And it's extremely cost effective. There's no capital equipment investment that's needed. And the cost per tablet is minimal. It's like 0.0001, 0.003 cents per tablet. So the cost is extremely efficient. And lastly, it's supported by Colorcon that has a global presence in many centers around the world to be able to support customers.
Thank you very much, Gary. I just have a couple of questions from the audience.
Sure.
The first one is, what is the regulatory status on the material?
The situation of the regulatory status is the bodies that have really weighed in, the US and the EMA, it appears that certainly the silicon dioxide and the molecular taggant are seen as excipients. And as excipients, they will not review those independently. They only review them as part of a drug application process. So at least what the FDA has said is that if it's considered an excipient for an existing product, it just has to be submitted in a level 1 annual report. And for new products, it just has to be identified in the NDA. So at this point, we're just launching these products. There has been no product, this has been approved yet, but we have had both products in front of the FDA Emerging Technology team, which evaluates these types of new technologies. And we provided a data file, and they are supportive. So they will work with the different reviewing bodies within the FDA in this case to help ensure that it goes smoothly in the evaluation process. You know, in other markets around the world, the silicon dioxide, as an example, meets the pharmacopoeia in China and Japan. And we're actually working in Brazil with Andova as well to get their perspective on it. But at this point, since it hasn't gone through with a specific product yet, it's not in the market in anywhere in the world. I will say that each product is available in a nutraceutical product that's available both in Europe and the US. So the silica taggant, as well as our molecular taggant, is available in a nutraceutical, but it didn't go through the formal FDA, regulatory body for prescription medicines.
The second question is, do you have some success history with the use of Soteria?
Well, as I just mentioned, the success we've had is really in our feasibility and the work that we've done in our labs. So we've been able to document 100% authentication of tablets that contain the taggants. We've been able to do a GMP batch run using the silica taggants and the DNA molecular taggants. So, we have all of the manufacturing and the stability data that we can share with companies that are interested. But at this point, because it hasn't been on the market yet in an approved product, we're not at a point where we can say, yes, there's, X number of products on the market using this technology.
Okay. And the last question is, if you have like a date when the app will be available.
Yeah, well, currently the molecular taggant and the silica taggant that's to be read by the desktop reader is commercially available this fall. The tag that's going to be available using the smartphone reader will be sometime in 2022. If there is someone who is interested, we are in the process of doing our product development with the smartphone tag, and we're certainly willing to talk and are very interested in talking with companies that might be interested in doing some work simultaneously, because many pharma companies would want to do their own stability testing. So we could do that in partnership during the development process. But certainly the earliest that the smartphone would be available would be sometime in probably mid to late 2022.